still called AngularJS. And then my whole life crumbled when they went to Angular 2 because we had to learn it from, almost from scratch again. And then, after that, though, after adjusting to it and everything, here we are today. And yeah, that was a needed change because the framework is just moving forward right now. It's being used, I think the last Stack Overflow said like 23 to 24% of the developers around the world are trusting in this framework, which I think should not be called a framework anymore. It is a complete platform. It has like a lot of things in there that you see that is in general trying to solve all the problems that web application development like throws our way. So today we're going to talk about, you're gonna see that I'm a metaphor guy. I'm African. That's how we were raised, with metaphors. So there is an Angular recipes blog that is coming out soon. And you're going to see that most of the time when I do examples, I will use like, cooking analogy. So like ingredients here and there. So if the metaphor doesn't stick, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to explain further if needed. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite ingredients in the Angular kitchen today, and that's the Async Pipe. So let me get you a good screen resolution here, and then I will be sharing my screen. So this is the one for that, and then in the view, yeah. So I think there you go. In Windows, this also I just went to Windows so I can go to full screen, and then boom, there you go. Nice. Now let me just go back and share the screen with you guys. Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
And if I go here, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about the Async Pipe. This banner alone is worth everything. So to me, I'm a happy camper right now, and I've been following Angular Kenya since I saw the first post, and then all the crazy good talks that have been happening. I've been following Wayne, shout out to Wayne, first GDE, like in the African continent. We are to follow your example. So very, very positive things coming from Kenya always, from the M-Pesa day to today. So nice space to be a part of. So very inspiring space. So yeah, so let's be talking about Async Pipe. But the very first thing we will do, I like, when I do any talk, I don't assume levels in programming or level in the framework. So I will go from a broad point of view, and then we will like kind of tone it down. We will kind of go in, but in a very, I hope, very easy to understand way. So when you come into Angular and you just hear pipe, if that's your first time into a framework, you might have not run into pipes before. So what is a pipe in the first place? If you come from a Linux background or from a typical like computer science background, you might have like dealt with pipe. But myself, I came from a very JavaScript web developer background. I did some piping back in the days, but I did not even know that's what they were called. I just knew that there was that vertical thing. So let's just quickly review what the pipe is. So when you're coming from a Linux background, a pipe allows you to take the output from a process and use it as input for the next process. And you can do that pipeline, if you really think about it, of chaining from one output to the other one. So let's say we wanted to list, we open any folder and we wanted to list all the files in our folder. So doing this quick review, we will come in here and we will type something like LSA to look at all the files. But then let's say we wanted to find out the ones that are PDFs. So now we're piping the first result into the second process, which is going to allow us to look for everything that is like a PDF file. So we just made a pipe right here, but it doesn't stop there. We can chain that. We can take the first one, pipe it to the next one, and then so forth and so on. So now we can sort it and then like have a descending order, okay? So piping is just that. It's like taking the output from one process and then using it as input for the next process in the pipeline, pipeline. So yeah, cool. That's pretty cool. So in Angular, it doesn't, there's that same, that same concept where the Angular pipes, and there are default ones, there are many of them, and what they pretty much do, they have the transform method that will take whatever input you are giving it, pass it to the transform method and give you a new output. But for the async pipe, it's very particular. It's only being bound. It can only be bound to a subscribable, and that will be either your observable or your promise. And yeah, to your observable or your subscription or to a promise. So subscription with like, a behavior subject, a subject, anything, or an explicit observable, or your regular promise. Those are the only three things that like an async pipe would be bound to in the Angular context. Anything else you try to, it will just throw an error. And we will look into that. So usually when you have observable involved, it's kind of becoming a de facto standard in Angular to use observable to consume services. So you have like an HTTP service, like the one we're looking at here, very simple service that is just like taking a movie collection. So I have a static JSON file, and that is allowing us to return like a stream of movies. And then just to fake like HTTP latency, we're delaying it by 3 seconds here. Okay, but in a typical setup, let's look at the typical setup if you're not aware of the async pipe, how you would go about subscribing to this one observable and then using the data you get from it, to show the view. So basically you will have a file like this. It's kind of hard to read, so I'm gonna like walk you step by step. Usually to only subscribe to one observable and then show it, we will have to have some type of a subscription, okay? So this subscription, we're gonna use it in a little bit in one of the life cycle, and then we have the actual observable here, and the standard that you see nowadays is if you have an observable, you have it like appended by a $sign to show that it is an observable. That's just a convention. You don't have to do it. You can put any other sign you want in there, as long as you are consistent with that, as long as you are consistent with your conventions. But this is a convention in the Angular world, so whenever you encounter that, basically you will know that, okay, this is probably an observable. So we're typing it, and then at the end there, we're piping it, and we're just doing a take one. So anytime we have the first emitted data we have, then we're done. We will close that observable. We are done. So we are still just trying to subscribe to one observable. In a typical setup, this would be the steps. Then we will probably create a local variable. That local variable you see is nicely typed and all, but it's a local variable. It's very static. It doesn't have any relationship with the stream. And in our init lifecycle, we take the subscription, we attach it, we give it the value of the observable, and then we have this subscription. That's where we're going to be doing it. So we are very explicit about how we're consuming this observable. And then finally, to follow best practices in our on-destroy lifecycle, we are unsubscribing. So this is very important, unsubscribing to observables, because if you don't, basically whenever like this component gets destroyed, that just means like we go to another route and that component is not active anymore. it will start. If you don't destroy it, it will create what we call a memory leak, because now you have a phantom component in there, a ghost component that is still being like open for subscription. So that's why it's de facto standard to anytime you subscribe, to unsubscribe. So those are the steps. So we had to create the subscription. We have to have, of course, an observable. We probably needed to create like a local variable. And then we have two Angular lifecycle method like involved: the onInit to set up the subscription, and then the onDestroy to destroy like the subscription. Okay. So what does our HTML template look like? So we have this, and then basically we are just using the ngIf directive here, and we are looking for a movie is that length. Okay. So we are playing on JavaScript here because movie length, if it is 0, 0 is a falsy value in JavaScript. So until we have an actual length, something bigger than 0, if we do have that, then the movie, and I have like a subcomponent that I just created called movie, that basically will just like be using the ng for loop, and it will show like every single movie. Okay. Now, if we don't have anything in the loading state, basically it will trigger our ng template here with the hash sign for loading. So those are the things that you are doing, and you say, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I kind of like this. But imagine if you had 5 observable or 5 subscription that you had. These steps would be needed to will need to be repeated for each of them. So, but does it work? I mean, at the end of the day, it works. If it works, it works. So here we have it. It's loading, and then we had that. Everybody is happy. Life is good. Okay. And Wayne, if there's any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me and ask. Okay, we can take questions as we go, and we can take it at the end. So just let me know. Okay. So far, so good. Okay, so it works and everything, but now you are getting a little more accustomed to the Angular way of doing things, and people are talking about performance. And you find out that there's a change detection strategy that is called Onpush. So basically, that's one of the very first of the refactor that you would do to make your Angular components a little more performant, because you don't want to be triggering change detection all the time. Change detection is a whole other subject on its own, but in summary, you only want Angular to react when there's something to react about. Okay. You only want Angular to react. Somebody's going to crucify me about this. Anyways, let's keep going. That's not a play on word. It just came out like that. So, okay. So now let's make a few changes, a little change in our app component here, where we're going to go and we're going to change the detection strategy. So in changing the detection strategy, we have to import the change detection strategy class. And then here in our component, we are changing the strategy to Onpush now. And before we go and see like the issue here, we need to understand that the moment that we say Onpush, Angular is only going to worry about your component in three scenarios, with 3 scenarios. The first one is if your component has inputs, anything with an input decorator, and those input change, then Angular would say, okay, something has changed. I'm only going to worry about the input change. The second type is like, when you have output in that component and they emit some kind of event, then Angular will be like, okay, something might have changed. Let me check it. The last one where Onpush will react is when you have a bound observable that emits new data, which is our use case. But in the state of our component right now, we don't have a bound observable because we are subscribing explicitly to that observable with our subscribe block in our ng on init. So what's going to happen? It's going to mark it for push. It's not going to worry about it. You know, we refresh it and we just stuck in a loading state. It's just stuck here. It's not going to go anywhere because loading is like, I don't know yet. I don't know if I have data. I don't know if I have an error. So I'm just loading. And there's nothing, there's no output, there's nothing coming to say to it, okay, something has changed. If we were to open the network tab, we will see that the observable, like the network call, has executed and we have data. But Angular is not aware of it because now you have put it on push and you did not give it any way of understanding that something has changed. So how are we going to fix this? We're still in the typical way that you will see observable being set without the async pipe. So coming in here, we have to add an extra step. We have to go and get what we call the change detector ref, a change detector reference, because now we have to manually or explicitly trigger that change. So when we have the change detector ref, using dependency injection in our constructor right there, we have it as a local variable, which is that CD variable you see. And then when we have a change, we explicitly mark the component for check. Okay, so this is one subscription with all the steps that we have done like so far. And then when we wanted to make it a little more performant, using like the Onpush strategy, then this is what we need to do as an extra step. Okay, so when we come back, we get back to our initial state. All right, so far so good. Any questions? Anybody? We still have everybody. Make sure that everybody got their coffee and everything, because there's going to be a lot of details in this one.
I think Joy has a question.
Yes.
My question is, could you go back to your code snippet?
Okay.
The TS file.
Yep.
The subscription, the way you have initialized, there's a type subscription. There's a exclamation at the end, but
okay, yeah,
down here,
yeah.
So I'm kind of confused.
No, yes, and very good eye right there. Oh man, I'm in trouble. Yeah, so that's just basically a new TypeScript way of saying. So TypeScript, if you go to a strict mode, basically that subscription, if you see, has no value yet. You know, the subscription will not have a value until it enters the ng on init lifecycle. This is a way to tell to TypeScript, hey, calm down. I know that there's no value right now, but there's going to be a value by the time the component is ready to be compiled. So that's why you add that exclamation in there. So if you're in a strict mode, basically it will tell you, hey, you need to add like a value to it. So what you could have done is instead of like putting it in there, you could have just do an equal sign and then like and then initialize the value, and TypeScript will leave you alone. But TypeScript is saying, hey, I'm not seeing any value for this. You're just giving me a variable with a type. What am I going to do with it? So you say, TypeScript, don't yell at me. I have an exclamation point. So I'm asking TypeScript not to yell at me, but I use an exclamation point to tell it to come down. It's going to be initialized. So that's one of the new ways. I mean, that's pretty recent actually, to just say, okay, it's going to be instantiated. It's going to be initialized at some point in the code.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Any other question? All right, so let's go. So we have our change detector ref that allows us to now mark our component for change. And then when we have the subscription, inside the subscription, when we are in that block, we know that we have data, so we mark it for change. So now, this becomes very painful when you have a lot of subscription to deal with and then repeating this process. So the Angular Async Pipe takes care of all of that for you. The Angular Async Pipe will subscribe to your observable. So you don't have to have a subscribe value. You don't have to deal with TypeScript yelling at you and saying like, hey, initialize this variable. You don't have to even have like, and I'll show you as we go. But the most important part, it will subscribe automatically, okay? So let me, it worked, but we had to be very explicit about each step, okay? So, and this gets me to segue into this concept of imperative programming style and then declarative one. So the imperative programming style is a paradigm that describes how the program should do something by explicitly specifying each instruction or statement, step by step, and then which means the program state, okay? The declarative way is a paradigm describing what the program does without explicitly specifying its control flow. And those are not my words, that's the words of Benoit Ruiz, and there's he has a cool article on Dev2 about it. But if you just go and you do any Google search about imperative versus declarative, you'll get a lot of good examples. But I have one that I love to give, the African address. If that doesn't stick with you, let's talk about the African address for a second. So let's say you want to know like where the new headquarters of NG Kenya is in Nairobi or somewhere, And that's my first time in Nairobi. I'm there and I'm like, okay, where's NG Kenya? I cannot reach Wayne right now, so I just need to know where the headquarters is. There's a cool meetup going on. And the guy tell me, okay, you go 3 blocks, you're gonna find like, somebody who's selling peanuts in there. Don't look at the one who's selling sugar because she can trick you. Look at the one who's selling peanut and take a right. After the first right, there's gonna be, so he not only like he's explaining it, but each step like has to be very precise and everything else. Whereas if I come and I say, hey man, I gotta get there, and somebody just send me maybe like, the latitude and longitude, and something says, okay, just go, I'll navigate you through it. So you have an imperative way, which is like a step-by-step, and like you have to be, the part is a little challenging is when you're implementing code in an imperative style, you have to be aware of each of the steps. When you're doing it in the declarative, you have to know the contract that the declarative style like gives you, what it fulfills for you, and then you just brush on it and you're done, okay? So let's do a declarative approach with the async pipe, okay? So there you go. That's how you looked before, not the other way, okay? So if we go with a declarative approach, so this is what we had for one observable. Now, first thing first, let's take out the change detector ref. AsyncPipe is gonna mark our component for change, okay? So we don't need the change detector ref. Second thing, we don't need the subscription. It's gonna subscribe for us. So no need for the subscription, okay? Third thing, since we don't need the subscription, we probably don't even need the ng on init lifecycle just so we can like have the subscription like initialized there. And since we don't even need that, we don't even need now the destroy lifecycle because the async pipe is gonna unsubscribe for us. So now we are left now with this template. This is how much we need just to get the async pipe going, at least at the component level. Now, at the view level, well, and I'm going to show you 2 examples. The first one, we're taking out the change detection strategy. We just go and we say, this is the first state that we had, no change detection strategy. And then we put them side by side. This is what we had with the imperative like on the left, and then this is what we have now with the declarative on the right. But to be fair, how does it affect our HTML template? Okay, so when we go to the view template, this is what we had. Basically, we have a section that shows like the happy pass, and then a loading template whenever we are loading and we don't have anything yet. So then this is the change that we're gonna have. We just wrapped the happy path in an ng container, and then we added an ng if directive. And this ng if directive now, we have our now playing, which is like the observable that is in our template. we piping it, just like the example that I show at the top of the hour, and we're saying that it's going to be async. So where the convention like becomes very important, the $ convention, just looking at this, scanning this, I'm like, okay, this variable with the $ at the end implies that's an observable and it is associated with the async pipe. So I should not have an issue with that. You know, if you come and you don't see the $ and you see async and you see the error thrown, you might have like, okay, something went wrong there because they are attaching or they're binding the async pipe to something that is not either an observable, a subscribable, a subscription, or a promise. But this is where convention helps you. So this is how you like basically like comment code without writing a comment. Okay, so we're passing it, and then the data that is coming from there, you remember earlier we had to create a local variable. Here we're aliasing that data as movies. Okay, and now coming back to our browser, it loads, 3 seconds, and then boom, we get to the same result. Magic. Any questions?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay. Make sure that nobody's sleeping, man, okay? All right. So, okay, we are no fools now. What about Onpush strategy? You did all of that. Okay, that's very nice. But what happened when we reuse our Onpush strategy? So we come back here in our template, and then we want to optimize for performance, and we hook it to like, we change the strategy to Onpush. We go back. He doesn't care. Yeah, I can handle that. You know, the AsyncPipe is a little cocky if you ask me. He's like, yeah, I can handle that. And then we good, basically, you know, because like I said, it will subscribe to your observable. It will unsubscribe when like it's the component is destroyed. It will mark the component for change, you know. And what else does it do? Oh, there's another cool thing. If you do, once you get into RxJS and you do things like switch map or anything like that, when the observable change, you know, it will unsubscribe to that old observable and subscribe to the new one. And there's the whole thing about hot observable versus cold observable. But Wayne and NG Kenya will have to invite me back so we can go in depth on those ones, okay?
Definitely.
So, no worries. So now we are back to not square one because, you know, what we are doing code-wise, I mean, to the user, they don't care about the async pipe. They don't even care about Angular. They just want to see their movies. But to us, we have like something that is maybe a little more manageable and a little like more scalable in a sense, you know. Now, my first initial reaction when I finally was able to eliminate so much code and just do this and it worked was this. You know, I almost cried. I was overwhelmed. I screamed. And then finally, I kind of calmed down. And I was like, this is slick, you know. But I'm like, okay, it's doing that, but how? It's doing all of these things. It's telling me that it's doing all of these things. It has all these promises that it's telling me it's going to do for me. But how is it doing it? We'll look at that in a moment. The other thing is, as before even I got to that part where I wanted to dig a little deeper and understand the inner workings, all the examples that I was looking at did not have error handling. What happened if the stream fails? Which happens. I mean, you can have a server error and then you don't get anything back. You can have like, you know, bad data, or like the type that you get is not like matching the type you're expecting. There's so many use cases, but most of the tutorials or the documentation that I saw at the time were just all covering the happy path, but not really like, excuse me a second. Sorry. they were almost all the time covering the happy pass, but there was not a clean way to show like how to handle errors with the async pipe. So I went to my old habits and I was like, okay, now let's force the issue here, okay? And the part that is good about these scenarios or like thinking about this way is when it comes to do your unit testing, you know, you can mock this type of stuff and then see the expected behavior and stuff like that. But that's for another day. So here we're gonna force the issue. We're gonna throw an error. So throw error is one of the types the RxJS operators. And then you see how we are setting up the error. It's an object that has a message as a key and then some string value. Now we're using like this chain of operators just to mimic the thing, because what we want is if it's loading, we don't know like if it's gonna have like a success or it's gonna be fair, if it's gonna have a failure. So it should be in loading state. But the moment that we get something back, it can only be like good or error. And then we want to be able to react. So technically, it should be loading and then tell us that something is wrong. Or it should be loading and then showing us the list of movies, okay? So right now, we are forcing the issue in our service and we're saying, let's just throw an error and see how it's going to react. So when we come back here, you're going to see that's going to be stuck in loading state. We can, I have a delay of three seconds, but it's going to stay here for the duration. I mean, yeah, for eternity, it's not going to go anyway. So, but your user is not going to stay and wait for you. She's gone already. So how do we fix it? There are literally two ways. I mean, of course, in each way, there are like, you know, other ways to do it. But you can do it in an imperative manner, or you can do it in a declarative manner. I'm like, how am I going to handle this? I went back to my imperative way first. I'm like, okay, this is like, I was able to reduce my code to this, but I will probably need to create a local variable. And you see that at this point, I was lazy to create an interface that just had like the error type. So I'm repeating here the model for the error, which is a message that is a string, you know, so, but that's a local variable. There's no $sign, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is inside of my observable, I'm gonna handle the unhappy path, which a catch error statement there. And basically I'm gonna put the value of this now playing error, which is a local variable now, with whatever error that was returned, okay? And yeah, and I do a return of array, empty array. And thinking about it, I think it's even better to just do a return of null or a return of like just empty if you're gonna go that route. But you need to return something, okay? So how about the HTML template? Why you can't get back to this? Control minus. Okay, so there you go. So how about the HTML template? So, well, it will get a bit complicated because now you have three states that you are managing: the loading state, the error state, and the success state, okay? So how do we reflect that in our HTML template? So this is what we had. This is what we had when we started. And now we have in our ngIf here, let me come back. We have like, if the now playing error is false, play the movie, put the movie block, okay? If not, go and look for a template name error. So that template name error is a second ng template that we are introducing here, basically, okay? And then it will show the now playing error with the message. And when we go back, we have loading. After 3 seconds, at least we have a feedback something went wrong. So of course, you as the developer can pick that and do something. There are like operators like retry or retry when and stuff like that that you can use that will allow you to, because catch error will just like stop your stream basically. But you have retry when and other stuff. So if anybody knows, if you have a long-lived observable, how to handle those stuff, please be my guest. Let's talk about it. But basically here, at least we have now an elegant way of handling like the error state. But we had to create, you know, a local variable, and it's kind of disconnected from the stream if you really think about it. Is there a better way? I think better is a big word. I was like very hesitant of using it, but there's another way. And I found out this solution with a tutorial that Josh Moroney put together, and he really went in depth in this. I mean, Josh is a great instructor. If you have done any Ionic, you probably have run into his tutorials. He's doing a lot of Angular these days, just Angular in general, and a lot of RxJS. A very good fellow a very good teacher overall, and a very good fellow to follow in general. So when I looked at Josh's example, it took me a minute to kind of understand what was going on, but I will show it to you, and you guys will tell me, you know, what you think about it. I kind of like it. We'll see. So let's do a quick refactoring. So in our component, this is what we had. We have the now playing error. Let's take that out and come back to our happy. This is what I call like the happy pass. So I want the observable to only worry about the happy pass right now. Now for like the error pass, I'm gonna have a now playing error, but you see the $. This is gonna be an observable that has the same signature of the error message that we're going to be expecting. But what is the value of this? It's going to be the now playing observable, and I'm going to pipe the rest of the things that I need to worry about. So that's how I was introduced to this operator, ignore elements. So basically what ignore elements, because if we don't do ignore elements, we are basically repeating the same observable over and over. But here we are telling, I only care about like errors and completion. So that's what ignore elements do for you. So in the error pass, so you see how like we were able to separate the happy pass is in the main observable. Now the error pass is just going to do a pipe to only worry about the error use case. And then basically we put our catch error in here. Okay. And finally, this is how we have refactored the component side of this observable issue. So we have the happy pass, which is now playing, and we have the error pass, which is just reusing our observable. And the key element here is ignore elements, because now it forces this observable to only worry about error and complete. So you could use other operators. You could use next in there if that was a subscribable. You could use complete and stuff. But right now, I'm worried only about catch error. Okay. Now, does it simplify the HTML template? Not really. But there are some cool stuff that like you get to find out there. So the very first thing is, this is where our HTML template was. Okay. So we have that ng container. That had an ng if directive. Inside that, we had another ng container for our happy pass. Then it had like our ng template for the error pass. And then finally, at the bottom, we have our ng template for the loading pass or loading state. Let's talk about state. Loading state, error state, success state. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is like, we're going to refactor this, and we're going to wrap everything inside one ng container. Everything is going to be wrapped inside one ng container. The very first thing, though, is we're going to have an ng if directive. This is just a setter. This is always going to be kind of trucy. So because we have an object, so the object is going to be trucy. But we're going to alias it as np, you know, np for now playing. So what is going to be in this object? First, we are referencing a now playing variable, which is just like the reference to the now playing observable. and you see that we still put the pipe and the async. Okay, next, now playing error, same syntax right here. Now, anytime in our template that we need any of those two to make a check, we can do np.nowPlaying or np.nowPlaying error. Yeah, it kind of took me a little bit, and I hated it at first, but I think I'm enjoying it. It's easier to enjoy something that you understand. So I think I hated it because I had no idea what he put in there. That just looked like whatever. But basically, it's an object. And the object, we are just basically referencing the async pipe. You don't even have to do it this way if you did not want to. But to me, it's very clean now that all of the subscription to the async pipe and everything are done in one place and one place only. You know, that really makes it clean in the long run, because that's going to be a kind of heavy template if we get to the end. So now that we have that set up, we get back to our section for the happy path, the success state. Okay, and then the change here basically is now for our directive, the ng if the condition is what? NP now playing as movies. So we still can alias to whatever we want here, you know, and this is still going to trigger the loading state if we don't have it. So the very first one is just a setup, the ng if, but really this is where, like, you know, the meat of, like, you know, our logic is going to reside. So in our success state, if we do have the NP now playing, then we're going to see like our view. If not, we're going to call the loading. Now, the next part is we taking advantage of ng if again, and now we have access to the NP now playing error as error, and then we will just display the error message. Okay, and that's what you see highlighted here. We have that directive, and then we have the error message. And then finally, we put back our ng template. So now we have only one template, ng template, and that's the loading state. You know, so those are the steps that allow us to do like loading, success, and error. And before I say anything about it, does it work? If we come back, we have now something went wrong. Okay, so basically, if we just like go back to this can probably be changed into a custom component that will take care of these three states. I unfortunately did not have a time to get to creating that custom component, but we can all take it as an exercise and see, and then that will allow you to, a use case like this, you can use that custom component. I don't remember the name of the fellow. I mean, it was in in-depth articles, in-depth article. I think it's in-depth.dev, and they have the example that shows how they use like the stream, and I think they use share replay in there. I mean, which is just there's so many little ways that you could do it, but the thing is, you need to be aware of these three states, and you need to be able to react to them. Okay, so if you do async pipe error handling in-depth dev, I think his article is going to come up. Very, very solid, like, you know, pieces of code in there, and how to turn it into like a reusable component. Okay, because to be honest, if I had another subscription, I will have to kind of do this again. So just like the movie component, I probably should find a way to turn this into a reusable component. Okay, so that's the caveat there. And yeah, it still works. Something went wrong. And
Wow.
that's all, folks. But
Oh, wow. Yeah.
is it really all? Because there's something that I promised you before. So what Daffy is saying to Sherlock here is, hey, yeah, you showed me all of this thing about the async pipe. You showed me about like having like a declarative way and stuff like that. But the proof is in the pudding. I mean, how do I know that all of this thing work? You know, how do I make sure that it's unsubscribing? How do I make sure that like it's going to destroy when I move away from that page and stuff like that? And it was like, okay, this is very nice. It's nice. The code has been abstracted from me, you know, but that's not code that I wrote. The Angular team wrote that code. Do I trust those guys and girls? I don't know. So how do we find out? And this is an exercise. You're not on Mac, so anything you want to do on Windows is Control, not Command. Okay, so let's go Control 2. So this is the actual site running here, and I can inspect it. So how are we going to find out if it's doing all the things that it's supposed to do? Well, let's check it out. Let's check out the source code. What do you mean check out the source code? Yeah, the Angular source code. Why would we do that? It's JavaScript at the end of the day. Well, it looks like more TypeScript to me now, but it's JavaScript at the end of the day when it's compiled. So that's me and my inner voice, like, you know, fighting over things. We do that all the time. I'm not crazy. You are developers. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So how do we find out that all of these things that the async pipe says that it's going to do it? How are we absolutely sure? Okay. And folks, believe me, there was a pull request that I had, and literally there was two people fighting. One who had like the first way of doing it, and the second one who did the async pipe. But the second one who did the async pipe did not know why it worked. The first one was irritated because it worked. Why would we change it? And they were both like, you know, kind of, I was leading that team, and they were kind of supervisor level. And then all of a sudden, this conversation turned into like something else. And I was like, okay, let's just find out. Let's all try to find out. Come tomorrow or in a couple of days, you know, just leave it as is. Let's not merge the code. Let us just find out, and then we'll see what we're gonna do. Because it was gonna be like a learning experience for all of us. So in your code or in your browser, you can go to the developer console, and then you have the source tab, basically. So snippets are the ones that you have created, but what we are interested in is the page one. So these are all the sources that are affecting your page. So you have your styles, you have Webpack, and you see, so there's this cool thing here about the stuff. So I don't need any of these guys. Can I just do a close all? Close all, yeah, I can do that, cool. So now here in localhost 4200, where my project is running, these are all the sources that are running right now. So I'm gonna go to the vendor tab, because that's where all of our Angular code will reside, okay? And I can collapse this. And here, I wanna know if there's an async pipe class that I can check into and see what it does. So I'm gonna just do a Control F, and I'm gonna look for class async pipe. And there's one. So there is the class async pipe in its JavaScript version, but let's see what it says first. So it unwraps a value from a primitive. The async pipe subscribes to an observable or a promise and returns, okay, sir, we're not gonna need that much of you right now. So something went wrong, stay that way, that's fine. He's pouting on the side, no problem. Okay, so the async pipe subscribes to an observable or a promise. And when we say observable, that's a subscription or an observable, and returns the latest value it has emitted. And then when a new value is emitted, the async pipe marks the component to be checked for changes. And when the component gets destroyed, the async pipe unsubscribes automatically to avoid potential memory leaks. So I'm not the one saying it anymore. This is the Angular team in their commented code that are saying it. Okay. Oh, and when the reference of the expression changes, the async pipe automatically unsubscribe from the old observable or promise and subscribe to the new one. Man, that is a beast. It's doing all of that. Now, okay, when we look at the class, it's just a JavaScript class. So we have a constructor that is going to be passed a reference. That reference is probably the component. And then look at the default value. The reference is going to be ref. And then latest value, subscription, object, and then strategy. And then here on destroy, it has its own on destroy. It will take the subscription, whatever it is, and then call the dispose of it, okay? Whatever strategy. And then here we have a subscribe block, the strategy. So that's going to be one of those three that we talked about. And if it's not bound to any of like either a promise, an observable, or like a subscription, then it's going to throw the invalid pipe argument. It can only be bound to one of those three. And then the dispose basically is going to use that strategy and then like dispose of that subscription. The update latest value does this for you. And then the important part here for us, it does this ref mark for check. So all of these things that we had to do explicitly, it does it implicitly for us. But if you want to really know, you can always put the breakpoint. It's JavaScript, and it's on the browser right now, and it's on the dev tools. So why not put a breakpoint? So let's put a breakpoint on the latest value. And since I know that I have an observable, I think that technically this should fire at some point because I have a subscribable. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. And that should be enough. And let's return the, okay, let's see. Let's just put a few breakpoints, okay? And you see it's a pipe and it has the transform method that like every single pipe in Angular will have that where you're doing like the little things, okay? So now let's refresh this. And you see the breakpoints are firing. So you're seeing that it's going inside of the is subscribable because we do have an observable here, and it's going to return the subscribable strategy. So that's what your first breakpoint is going to do. So we go, and then here, let's see. Okay, we have nothing yet. The latest value is no. Let me go one more. Okay, it's coming up to, that's the thing though, yeah. It's coming up to the transform and it's returning the latest value, which is null. We don't have anything. And that's why we're still seeing the loading state. And now here, you see that the latest value now is at message something went wrong because the catch error when it like was able to send this out. But now in your code, you can like work this out. And as you are, the cool thing about breakpoints, I have a video coming up about debugging Angular. You can do it in Chrome, but you can do it directly in VS Code. The cool thing is like, as you are going through the breakpoint, it shows you like the call stack, how things are being executed, you know, what to watch, all this little thing. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in here. So as you are like, you know, becoming a debugging wizard, you know, this is a great tool to have. And you can do the same thing inside of Visual Studio Code. I'll make sure to share that video as soon as it's available. So, but right now we have just debugged, or like we have just looked at or questioned the Angular source code. And that's something that I never did before. I was just like, I'll take it as is, but when you want to deepen the understanding, this is one of the ways of doing it. And you can do it for any classes that you see in Angular. You know, there's the Async Pipe, there's the ng template outlet. Anything that is going to be in your Angular is going to be there. And the cool thing that happened too is when I put the breakpoint, it opened it. I was in Vendor.js, but it opened it in Common MGS. And when you highlight Common MGS, it shows you the exact path, you know, of like the compiled code. So it's going to be in my node modules. in Angular, and then it's using the 2015 strategy because that's the one that I have in my Angular JSON. So it gives you like all these things, and you could of course open that file in VS Code and get to see like how it's going. So with that, I think that this time that's all, folks. I don't have anything else for you.
Wow, like really, really, really amazing, honestly. Like I think I was like just glued to my screen. I was like, okay, what else? What new thing really is he going to teach us? I like this is really, really amazing, honestly. Man, this was great.
Great.
I don't know.
Great,
Does
great.
anyone have any question? Any question, please? Or any comments? Please feel free to unmute yourself and share. Feel free. If you have a question or if you have a comment.
Hi, Adi. Can you hear me?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you.
First, your session was quite mind-blowing. I think I've written notes, 3 pages or 2 pages, something.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I wish you could go on and on and on.
There's gonna be
so,
more. Don't worry about it.
I have a question. Earlier on, when you're starting, you said something about bound observables, right? Or I did not get that right. So, could you explain what what a bound observable is?
Yeah. So let me go to the code directly this time. Is that where is it? Get started. That's the deck, and yep. So app component. Yeah, I'm gonna share my code, my screen again. I realized that I have stopped sharing. So let me keep sharing. Sharing is caring. That's what they say. So let's hide that. And let me know when you can see VS Code.
I can see.
Yeah.
We can see.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So we in VS Code, and then well, Coca will deal with you later. And here in the app component HTML, yeah, basically. So the bound observable, so the async pipe basically allows the bound observable side of it is like on the left side of it. If you remember at the top of the presentation, we did a quick pipe review. So the quick pipe review is that the output that is coming from the left has to be either an observable, a subscription, or a promise.
Yeah.
So if we don't have any of that here, then like the async, like, because the pipe is here. So basically, if you're reading async pipe in Angular, you're reading from right to left, async pipe. So the async pipe is looking for to be bound to one of those 3 scenarios. So if we had anything but one of those on the left side, then it will throw that invalid that we saw earlier here. So you see in the actual code, where was I? So let's go back to the class async pipe. Yeah, you see, so the strategy that it's looking for is it a promise? Is it a subscribable? And if it's none of those, it will throw this invalid argument, pipe argument error. So the pipe argument has to be an observable or like a promise.
Okay.
Make sense?
Thank you. Makes sense.
Okay.
And okay. One last thing. I'm not sure that it's related to this talk. aside from not destroying your subscriptions, which other way can memory leaks be caused by? Like, which other things can I do in my Angular code that will cause memory leaks?
Which other? The one, I mean, that's an interesting question, because the one that I really know about is unsubscribing from observable. But I would say any type of async code that is not basically taken care of, anything that is like that the result is coming sometime in the future, I would say those are a very good candidate in causing memory leak, because once like the component is not active anymore, whatever their event or their subscription or whatever is might still be active, and then it's just looking for a ghost component. So yeah, so I would say anything that is an async process, that will kind of mandate checking like how to make sure that when the component is destroyed, that asyncness is taken care of.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Good talk.
Thank you.
Anyone else has a question or a comment? I saw like people were applauding. I mean, they're applauding. You want to also, you could definitely unmute yourself and just say thank you or something. I don't know. Feel free to unmute yourself. Don't feel shy.
Since when African people are shy? I know that there's people all around, but come on, guys and girls.
Yeah, hi, Alex. Yeah, sure.
Yes. Thank you, Adi, for the presentation. I like the idea of aliasing the async, the observables, where you had the error and you had the now playing. I like that idea. You don't have to worry about many ngifs. So that's a cleaner way of being able to show different states using the aliasing. I like that. It's nice and clean. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And at the end of the day, too, one thing that I want to be very, very clear about, and that I always talk to with the people that I talk about Angular and coding in general, if the first way makes sense to you, go for it. Don't just adopt the second way because everybody's doing it. Adopt it because you have understanding. I will always go for the developer who puts some code and understand it, and then is able not to defend it, but who can talk about it. And he say, okay, these are the reason why I chose this way. If we go back to the NG Kenya headquarters, if I have only one way to get there, that takes me 20 minutes longer. It's usually better to take that one than like being adventurous and like finding myself now like somewhere in Swaziland or somewhere like I was not supposed to be, So code with meaning, but code with understanding. At the end of the day, when you are like doing this, you get to the point where you stop being a developer and you become a craftsman or a craftswoman. So understand like each of these nuances. If that's already something that is there, you're inheriting a code base, then now you have a tool that allows you to go and question that source. I always say to the new folks in Angular, open the code source. If you don't understand the TypeScript side, open the JavaScript side. Try to make sense out of it. Ask a question. Wayne will answer it. I'll try to answer it. Somebody else will try to answer it, because that's how the community gets better. But please add understanding to like whatever you're doing, to your conduct, to your coding. If the first one works, go for it. If it doesn't work, find a way to make it work first and make it better. That's the one thing that I think, this did not come to me like in 2 days. This been like maybe 2 or 3 years in the making. So, it's very easy to come and show you a package content, but I spent 30, 40 hours preparing for it or more. So this is not reality. It's just a show. The reality is you getting like some ideas from it, and then, you know, getting understanding. So code with understanding.
Yeah, that's a very strong point. And I think for me, it's more of a comment. Like, yeah, personally, I think I've learned a lot because I think for some of us, like, you know, the coding we are doing is like we're only interested in the happy part and the loading. The errors sometimes not so much. But then today, it's like you've shown us how to handle both the happy path, the error path, and then the loading states, and then how to put them in a way that is cleaner, more concise, and a bit more maintainable. So, which is really great, and personally, I've also learned something new today in RxJS. Ignore elements. I've never known about that. So really great, really great. Yeah. For me, I don't really have questions. I think questions have already been asked by Joy, and mine were more of like the and yeah. I liked the gifs and the videos at the end. Stuff it down.
At the end of the day, if that's the only thing that people take from it, that's great, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it was for me, it was an amazing session. Honestly, I've learned a lot, and I think I'm definitely going to be tinkering around with some of the things.
Yeah. Yes, you should come to Kenya as well.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Kenya and Rwanda, they are part of my list. I have to. I will. So,
awesome.
And some people here are preparing Angular Africa, so we don't know if they're going to meet in Kenya or where. So let's just put that out there. It's floating.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Definitely. Looking forward
one
to
last
it.
thing, Ali, for the sake of the community members, if anyone would like to reach to you, where can they find you?
Mainly on Twitter. I'm mostly active on Twitter this day. So if you go to my, I mean, it's on the banner, ADYNGOM, mainly on Twitter and LinkedIn. LinkedIn too, same handle, ADYNGOM. Not so much Facebooks these days, but those two, you know, and I try to reply to every message, you know, and like engage with the community. So if you have further questions, let me know. The slides and the code I will share with you, the organizers, at some point. So anybody who's interested can get them. I have organized them in 3 branches, like for the 3 different like steps. So feel free to look at it, to make it better, and to share back with the community. So those will be there.
Okay, thank you so much.